Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing my VCT America's Week 4 power rankings. I'm going to be ranking all 11 teams into these 5 tiers and explaining why I have each team moving up or down or staying the same. I do this every week, so if you enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps me out. I also do predictions every week. So that'll come later in the week, closer to when America's is starting. Um, so yeah, like, sub, do all that stuff. Keep in touch. Go follow me on Twitter. If you're interested in player rankings, I do those every week for every region. I also do VOD reviews on my Twitch sometimes, um, just like going through the games that I don't catch live and everything like that. Usually Pacific games it ends up being, sometimes EMEA, but not exactly sure. Also with my Twitter, I'm uploading this on Thursday, meaning today my account will be taken over by all NFL draft stuff. So if you're not interested in that, it will change by the time the draft is over. So it don't mind that as much. I'm way too into that as it is. But yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. So starting in the bad tier, we have Furia. I've had them 11. I'm pretty sure every week so far. So really not a ton to talk about with this team. They're just getting fucking dominated every week by every team. Um, like they have a meme about speedrunning their Valorant team. Like there's just it's just over, man. Um, I think the one thing that I do have a takeaway with this team is how bad Havoc has been. And I don't think he's necessarily a bad player. Like I still like a lot of the things that I saw from him before um, the season started, but I just think his confidence got ruined in this team. Like going with that 2-20 game on Breeze against Energy at kickoff, that it was just over from the start. And I mean that can be because of bad mentality, which is probably true, but I also don't think this team has a great environment, considering some of the players passed on other teams and everything like that. So I don't know. I think Havoc just got ruined by a really bad team here. I also think he's being misused a little bit, but like I think his best stuff was like the KO and Sky, and he's gotten to play quite a bit of KO. So I don't know. And then the other team we have in the bad tier here is MIBR, moving down one spot. Just another team that's kind of hard to talk about. Just another team that's getting rolled every single week by every team. And I've always thought this team has had like nice ideas of how to play maps and everything like that. Um, and they've had like decent fundamentals and everything like that. Like you can see the ideas being there. It's just the talent on this team is not good. They don't have the firepower. They don't even like they don't really have the discipline, and I think that it looks like it's the player's fault to me. I don't know how to explain it, but like there's that, and then like I think a lot of the comps are being really simplified. Like they're running the 2023 comps on pretty much every map. Um, so it feels like a lot of stuff is just being simplified to fit into the talent they have on this team, and also I don't think JZZ is good at anything other than Raze. So like that's probably not helping with the double duelist stuff. But yeah, I still think RGL looks decent. I think Artzine is fine, but I still think you're looking to replace at least Artzine. Um, Not RGL though. RGL is too good to replace, I think. But you're still looking to replace Artzine going into the offseason, and obviously the rest of the team as well, with what I've said. So just not ideal. Then moving on to this weird tier of teams where I don't know what you're going to get from these teams week to week. Um, and at number 9 here, this might be low for some people, but I do have Evil Geniuses. Um, the Sun game was super impressive, but I mean, how much are you really weighing that versus like the 3 other teams or the 3 other games that they've played? Specifically, the crew game this week that was just horrific. Um, I do think the Sen game is more relevant to this team since it was their most recent game, and I don't know. It's just they've looked the best that they have, and they kind of look back to what maybe they were at kickoff, something similar to like that. Apoth looked really good in that game. I don't know how consistent that's going to be because he's had some good like maps and like halves here and there, but overall he's just like his bad halves are so bad that like it's hard to feel okay with his good halves. Um, So he's just a weird player. I'd like to see him be more consistent. Jaw was unreal in this game. He was the only reason they were remotely close to them to send on Lotus. Like that would have been a 13-3 stomp, and then they would have gotten stomped on the second map based on confidence. If it were not for Jaw starting off that map so well. Um, Supa, I mean, he had his good game. He's known to be very inconsistent. If he can do this every game, then maybe this team can be something more. But again, I'll believe it when I see it with him. Nature and Derek still look good. I thought they've looked good pretty much every game. Um, I think Derek's had like a rough game. I think it was it against Crew? It was against somebody. Um, I remember it like sounds. It was against C9. That's what it was. Thank you me for remembering that. But yeah, I think the main thing is I just want to see it again from this team, and then I'll start shooting them up the rankings. But the other thing I do want to say with this team is Potter is genuinely the GOAT. I think she's the best coach in the world right now. Getting anything out of this roster is unbelievable. And yeah. Then again, I think a ranking that might be a little low for some people, but America's is stacked right now. I have C9 here. They played a super scrappy and weird game against Loud, where I mean Oxy just looked incredible. I thought Zeppa and Rooney also looked really good that game. Moose had a pretty solid game throughout. Vanity's calling looked good, but my god, that 100 Thieves game was tragic. All the individuals looked off, including Oxy. He looked back into that like player that I was kind of rating him as during kickoff or after kickoff, where it was like, yeah, he has some nice moments, but man, is there a lot of bad in there with him. Um, I don't think he'll be that every week, but I think when you're getting that every couple weeks with him, it's not good. Um, I think he'll play better into the future than he did, but like he had some rounds where he played really well, but like there were so many times where he just wasn't like he was dashing in on ascent and just not clearing stuff sometimes, and that was just awful. Rooney, Zeppa, and Moose in the 100 Thieves game did not shoot back at all. Neither did Vanity, but like you don't expect your IGL to shoot back. And for what it's worth, I do think the Vanity calling did look good in the 100 Thieves game still. So that's a good sign. That's why they're still ahead of EG. Um, but it's what I expected from this team. It's why I didn't shoot them up into like the top 5 when like they run into a team that is actually playing well. They are not going to win. Um, and I think that's just how it's going to be with this team. Then we have Loud. I mean, they look off right now. Um, they just need a guy on Duelist. Oh wait, I didn't actually click in the fucking slides. Oops. Um, which they don't have. I mean, QCK is genuinely bad. Um, I do still think the 4 core of Loud, um, being like less Sada, Kawan, and Tui's, are still really good players, but it is hard to win when you're never getting first kills, when you're never like getting any value out of that 4th player or 5th player slot. And it's just, yeah, it's just hard. I do think also that there are times where Sadak is trying to do too much in terms of playing weird comps in a different style when they could just play the default stuff where they've looked the best. Like they are at their best when they play the default comps on like at Champs last year. They played it on the default comps on Lotus, on Ascent, later in the tournament. Like whenever they play default stuff, they look insane. And maybe sometimes these like weird comps can look good as a one-off thing, but overall, like man, they need to stay on default comps. Maybe play something more like Navi does, where like most of the time they're sticking to one comp that is good, but sometimes they'll throw out a weird comp and have multiple comps on certain maps. I think that could be good for this team, but I don't see them implementing that this year. That would be more of a like into next year thing, and I still think they need to get a new duelist, in my opinion. Then moving on to G2, who my perception of them is going up, even though they're staying in the same spot here. I do really think it was a great week for this team. They beat the Furia speedrun record that was set by NRG. Um, and I mean, they destroyed them in that game, obviously. And then in the Lev game, I do think there was a bit of trolling in the first and last map. Like, there were some moments where, like, whoa, what are you doing? But overall, I do think they looked really nice, especially on Icebox. They were so good on that map. Um, and I do feel better about this team continuing to get better down the road. I just don't know if they're going to be able to beat some of the teams above them. Absolutely could. Like, they could turn into one of the best teams in Americas by the end of the year, or even into next year since they still have that Ascension slot. Um, I do think IC looked a lot better in their 2 games this week, especially in the first one. Obviously, since they're playing a bad team, he still isn't great. I do think there will end up being better duelist options heading into next year. So maybe he ends up getting dropped or something like that. But overall, I do like the spot that this team is in a lot. And I also think Trent looks like, despite his stats not being good in that Lev game, I still think he looks like probably the best initiator in Americas right now, with Saucy, Crashies, and Kawan not looking as good. Then moving on to our great teams tier, and at number 5, I have Crew moving up 3 spots. I do think this might be low for some people. I just I can't bring myself to put them over the top 4 teams here. So I don't know. They can get over them in these next coming weeks. I want to see a little bit more. Like, they've beat a lot of very good teams, which is why they're up here. Um, I still don't think they're doing anything incredible with their macro play. Like, it's very, very good. And I do think the like fundamentals and the mid rounding here from Klaus is so good. Like, probably the best in Americas right now. The reason they're still in this great teams tier and at number 5 is I don't know how they'll fare against these top teams in Americas and the top teams in the world when it gets to like international play, possibly. But I still do think they look really good. Kesnet looks like one of the best duelists in Americas. You could argue the best outside of Aspas. I think in terms of how they're playing this split, I think he has looked the best outside of Aspas. Maybe you could get Cryo in there. We'll talk about in a little bit. But I mean, in the loud game, Shy was farming. Um, and yeah, I mean, Shy is just so consistently good, as I've been saying. I was very critical of Leviathan for dropping him. Now, that was probably because he didn't feel comfortable speaking English and whatever, but it was still a really good pickup for Crew. And yeah, you got to feel really good as a Crew fan uh, heading into the late stages of this split and into playoffs, potentially making it back to an international stage, which is very far from where we thought this team would be. Honestly, I totally forgot that I had to talk about 100 Thieves after this. Like, I don't know why I ended the recording after the Crew part, but whatever. Moved on to 100 Thieves. They repeated what they did last week versus G2. They only had to prep for the 1C9 game, which I do think helped them a lot this week. But I do think Boostio's calling has been unreal. Um, Honestly, you could argue it's been the best in Americas so far this year, or like in this split. Like, yeah, John's calling at Madrid, and before that was unreal. But right now, it's getting a little readable and everything like that. So I'm not sure if you would put him up there. Sadak again, 0-3. Like, I don't think you can really put him up there. I think the only other caller that you'd put him up there with is Klaus. Um, but I would slightly lean Boostio personally. Um, but yeah, still incredible. Looked better as a fragger as well. Had the mouse disconnect thing, which was fucking incredible. I don't think I've been I don't think I've laughed as hard as at a clip, especially when he called them all terrible after it. It was just great. I love that. As a 100 Thieves fan, Bang. I mean, oh my god, he looked good this week. I want to see it again with him. Obviously, he was hyped up to be one of the best smokes players in the world heading into 2023, and he did not live up to that hype. I think if he finally realizes it this year, this could be genuinely the best team in America's, um, especially with this Asuna EU duo looking incredible in these late round scenarios. Um, I mean, Asuna was so heavily criticized by people because FNS called him bad a couple times because he does some silly things and FNS is trolling. Then he made fun of Asuna's comms and it got worse somehow. I don't know, man. It's just everybody follows what FNS says, even if he's trolling, which doesn't make sense to me. Um, but even though I love FNS and a lot of the stuff he says is correct, it's just when it comes to Asuna, he is a hater, but he acknowledges that and he knows that and he's trolling. So I don't know. I'm not going to spend. I spent way too much time talking about that already. Cryo. I mean, good lord, he is farming right now. I don't know. I do have. I do feel like I have him a little bit low in my player rankings. I think I had him fifth in duelists, and I do think he's playing like a top three duelist right now, in terms of just this split. But his smokes look really good. Again, keep him off the Omen. I think we'll talk about this in a little bit with NRG. Um, but his Brim and Astra look really good. I think if he's playing like an Icebox Omen or something like that, he'd be good on it. But other than that, like keep him off that. But on the Jet, Astra, Brim, like he's being used to his perfect role. And I think this team is really gelling together and could end up in this international contenders tier next week. I just want to see a little bit more from them. Now, in this international contenders tier, where, wow, we got to have some talks here. We're going to start with NRG. It does feel high considering how they played last week. The Lev game was unbelievably bad. Genuinely one of the worst performances by any team all year, like regardless of their standard. But moving past that game, like they did look better versus MIBR. I will say that. Now, how much better? Not a ton. I still don't love it. Um, but like my thoughts on them go back to what it was before the split started. Or I just don't think this team has any idea how to use Demon One in the best way for him. Obviously, there's stuff outside of the game with Demon One that's affecting his performance, but I'm talking about strictly in the server. They are not using him on the correct roles in the correct way. And I think it's specifically Chet. Like, he just doesn't. I don't. Like, he had Ye for 2 years and he used him perfectly. He's like, yes, you are just going to play Jet. You are just going to play Chamber. Like, didn't have him play anything else, I don't think. And I think asking Demon One to play things other than Jet, Chamber, Astra, Brim is just trolling. Obviously, it'll make some comps worse. I acknowledge that. But when you have a player of his skill, I think you do need to switch up the roles. I do also think that he could play Sentinel. I think he can play the Killjoy. I think he can play the Cypher when you need to play the Raze on Vic. So you don't end up having to swap all of your roles around everywhere. Or like, oh, on Bind, like the bind roles make no sense to me. You could literally play Vic on Raze, Demon One on Brim, and they would actually be good on that map. On Split, honestly, you could play the exact same comp with the exact same roles, except Demon One is playing Cypher because it is not that difficult of an agent to play. You can put the util down and you shoot people. Just have him do what Les does. I'm trying to think of other maps where it's relevant. Where there's not even that many. Like you can still play Jet. You can play Cypher on Sunset, where Vic plays the Raze. Like it's just so frustrating with this team because you see the talent there, and I think it just comes back to that with the Demon One performance, which is the big thing with this team that everybody's talking about. But also the calling is bad. It was really good against some of the other teams, but in the Super Week this week, it was horrific. It's just so like so readable all the time. Like They like make noise on one side of the map and never leave until they get like it looks like a ranked game sometimes with them. So you'd hope that gets fixed. Like it started to look a lot better in their first couple weeks and then just tanked. So that's why I'm not dropping them too far. But if it happens again, they are gonna get really tanked. And then Senstang put at number 2. I was gonna drop them to number 3, and then NRG had their fiasco this week. Well, I think it was the other way around. I would have dropped them to number 3 had NRG not trolled. Um, they looked a lot better than they had the first couple weeks against MIBR. But man, the EG game just looked straight back to what they were before. When you're playing against Potter, like you can't be readable, and I think their style is just getting so readable with like the flowy defense, I guess is how you'd call it, where like they'll have people really hard rotating and like making hard reads across the map. Like specifically on their Lotus, you'll notice it. Like if you pay attention to how they rotate, um, I think that's the most obvious map where that happens. Um, they just need to change something up with their style specifically, but that is a hard thing to change in the middle of the year. So if they're playing against teams that like know what they're doing, I don't see I have a hard time seeing Sen winning. Now I do still really believe in this team. I believe in the individual talent. I believe in everything like that. I do think Zekin is having kind of a rough split. Tens isn't playing to the same level. Saucy isn't playing as well. Zelsis isn't even playing as well. I think John's the only one playing to the same level as an individual, and his calling hasn't even been that good. So I am worried about Sentinels as well. But I don't think either of these teams deserve to be dropped out of this top tier yet. I will be very cautious going into next week with these two teams, though. I think if they do anything to warrant dropping them, then they will be dropped. And obviously, number 1 here, we have Leviathan. I don't think it's too much of a question, but I do think they're still in the same tier as Sen and NRG. I don't think they looked as great against G2. I do think they had a great map in Breeze, but I think other than that, it looked a little shaky at times, but overall, they looked insane. Osbos is the best player in the world, straight up. King's Calling looks a lot better. I don't think it's incredible or anything, but it looks significantly better than it did week 1. And then in turn comes individual performances looking a lot better. I think I liked playing him. I liked him playing the Sentinel on Sunset. Tex, same deal. Obviously not because of the calling stuff, but he looked insane in that G2 series. Mizzino looks unbelievable. I hope he keeps that up. I'm not completely sold that he will. Just overall, the most stacked team in Americas, and I think a lot of people overthought this team, including myself. Now, obviously, it was because of some bad performances, but even heading into the year, people had them like 3rd, 4th, everything like that, already getting the bad vibes, and I think that was a little early, I guess. Like dropping them after kickoff was fine. But I mean, the talent on this team was just too good. Like I was very slow to drop them out of like the top 5, 6, but yeah, I still dropped them obviously. So best team in Americas. Honestly, I think best team in the world right now with like Paper X, Gen G struggling, the 2 EMEA teams struggling, Fnatic, Navi not being the team that they've been all time, but I think currently in their current form, Leviathan is the best team in the world. And with that, those are my power rankings for this week. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Always open to hearing your guys' feedback. I do think this one is going to be a little bit more controversial than some other weeks, but yeah, like some people might think Loud is still too high, Energy and Sen are still too high, Crew too low, C9 too low, EG too low. Really wondering what you guys think this week. But let me know in the comments below, everything like that. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.